Lowe had never considered himself superstitious. Logic guided his steps, and skepticism had been his closest ally since adolescence. Yet, on that quiet autumn evening, when the sun dissolved into a maroon haze behind his apartment building, he felt something inexplicable, the kind of tightness in the chest that whispered of being observed. The apartment complex had always been strange, a sprawling concrete labyrinth of peeling paint and dim corridors. It held stories whispered among resident stories, and Lowe usually dismissed. One of the most persistent legends surrounded apartment 6B. No one lived there. No one could live there. The landlord avoided discussing it, and the neighbors crossed themselves when asked. The door remained locked, its metal warped and bruised with age, a deadbolt rusted shut. Yet, at night, lights flickered beneath the threshold, and sometimes on still nights you could hear someone moving inside. NLO scoffed at the tales until the evening he lingered in the hallway after retrieving his mail. That was when he heard it for the first time, a faint dragging sound from inside 6B, like furniture being pulled across the floor. He froze, key clenched in his fist. Maybe it's just the building settling, he whispered to himself, but his voice carried too loudly in the narrow hall. Then came the knock, not on the door but from inside the apartment, as if someone were rapping from within the sealed room. 3 deliberate strikes. His blood cooled inside his own apartment. Lowe couldn't shake it. He poured himself tea, but the clink of the porcelain cup only amplified the memory of that hollow knocking. His rational side argued, there's a simple explanation. Squatters. Faulty pipes. Maybe the landlord left something inside years ago. That's making noise. But then, intrusive thought, what if someone's trapped in there? The idea needled him through the night, his dreams fractured by dim corridors and unseen eyes. The next morning, he confronted Mrs. Aguilar, the elderly tenant, across the hall. She stood with her usual broom in hand, her wiry frame hunched, but alert. Mrs. Aguilar, Nello began carefully. Do you know anything about 6B? Last night, I thought I heard her broom clattered against the floor as she raised a trembling hand. Don't ask about that room, hee-ho. Don't go near it. Promise me. Her eyes glistened with an almost childlike fear, and Nello felt a pang of guilt. But why? There has to be a reason. She shook her head, lips pressed tightly. That room is not empty. It never has been. Just stay away. She retreated into her apartment, shutting the door with a finality that left Elo more unsettled than before. That evening, when silence blanketed the building, curiosity gnawed at him. He found himself standing before 6B again, his palm resting on the cool brass of the doorknob. He wasn't sure why. Was it arrogance, defiance, or genuine concern? Then, from behind the door, came the sound of breathing, slow, ragged, inhumanly deep. Elo stumbled back, his spine pressed against the opposite wall. His thoughts spiraled. This is real. Someone's inside. I have tooth and knob twisted. The door shifted just an inch, though the deadbolt remained locked. Through the narrow gap, a single pale hand emerged, its nails cracked and skin waxy. It groped the air blindly, searching. Lowe's breath hitched. His rational mind shattered in an instant. The hand withdrew. The door slammed shut. Silence returned, and in that silence, Nello heard a whisper not from inside the room, but from somewhere much closer, directly behind his ear. Help me. Noah didn't sleep that night. His body had lain stiff in bed, but his mind refused rest, turning in frantic circles around what he had witnessed. That hand pale with its claw-like nails scraping air, as though blind had branded itself into his memory. No matter how tightly he shut his eyes, he saw it again, reaching, always reaching. Morning light crawled through the blinds, but it did not soothe him. The normal sounds of the neighborhood, the laughter of school children, the bark of a distant dog, the groan of the garbage truck felt muffled, like they belonged to another world. He sat hunched at his kitchen table, staring at the untouched mug of coffee before him. It couldn't have been real. His rational voice tried to take charge. Again, you're exhausted, maybe even hallucinating. Stress can do strange things. It had to be your imagination. But the echo of the whisper helped me nod at him. That hadn't been imagined. It had been too sharp, too intimate, too close. By noon, he made a decision. He needed answers. The landlord, Mr. Reeves, was a difficult man to track down, but Nello found him in the basement, tinkering with the furnace. The air reeked of oil and rust, and Reeves was hunched over with his usual cigarette dangling from his lips. Ash dangerously long. Mr. Reeves, Ella began, trying to keep his voice steady. I need to ask you about apartment 6B. The landlord froze. His head didn't turn immediately, but the subtle twitch in his jaw betrayed tension. What about it? It's not empty, is it? Low pressed. Last night I heard noises. Someone's in there. Reeves straightened, exhaling smoke into the stale air. He finally looked at Nello, his eyes bloodshot, his expression unreadable. Don't concern yourself with that unit. It's sealed for a reason. That's not good enough, Lowe snapped, before he could stop himself. If someone's trapped in there, if their Reeves cut him off with a sharp gesture. Don't play hero. You think you're the first tenant who's asked me about 6B. The first fool who's lingered by that door. Curiosity gets people in trouble, son. You'd be wise to forget you ever heard a thing. His tone was final, but No's frustration surged. So you admit there's something inside. Reeves' lips pressed into a thin line. For a moment, the older man looked as though he might reveal something. Some sliver of truth, but instead, he ground his cigarette under his boot and muttered, "Some rooms are better left locked." He turned back to the furnace, dismissing hello, as though he were nothing more than an irritating draft. That night, the noises returned. NLO lay on his couch, eyes locked on the ceiling as the dragging sounds began again from within 6B. The scrape of heavy furniture across wood, a dull thud, then silence. His pulse raced. He rose, almost against his will, and crept into the hallway. The corridor was cloaked in shadow, lit only by the weak glow of the emergency exit sign at the far end. His bare feet brushed against the chill linoleum as he approached the infamous door. It was quiet, too quiet. He leaned in, pressing his ear against the cold metal. For a few heartbeats, there was nothing, just the distant hum of the building's pipes. Then so faint he imagined, it came a voice. No. He jerked back, eyes wide. His name, his own name, whispered from within. Panic seized him. He stumbled into his apartment, slamming the door and locking it. He pressed his back against the wood, gasping. His thoughts fractured. How do they know? Me? Who are they? Am I losing my mind? The next morning, Mrs. Aguilar intercepted him as he stepped out with his work bag. Her face was pale, eyes rimmed red from lack of sleep. You went back there, didn't you? She accused, her voice a trembling whisper. NLO froze. How do you? I heard the door last night, she interrupted. The building remembers. It wakes when people disturb it. The building, he echoed, his frustration rising. Mrs. Aguilar, please. I just want to understand. What happened in 6B? Why is it locked? Her gaze darted nervously down the hall, as though speaking the truth might summon something. She leaned in close. A family lived there. Husband, wife, and their little girl. Sweet child, always singing in the stairwell. Then one night screams, loud enough to wake the entire floor. But by the time anyone got there, silence. Door locked from the inside. No one came out. No one ever saw them again. Her hands trembled as she gripped her broom tighter. The police broke in days later, but the room was wrong, empty. Not a stick of furniture, not a single trace they had ever lived there. But still people heard the girl, singing, crying. That's when Reeves sealed it. Her voice cracked. And if you're smart, you'll leave it alone. That room takes people. Her words clung to him like cobwebs all day, but curiosity isn't so easily strangled. That evening, armed with nothing but a flashlight and his own gnawing desperation, Enlo returned to 6B. He crouched by the door, inspecting the old lock. The rusted deadbolt looked formidable, but he'd tinkered with locks in college, mostly as a stupid hobby. With shaking hands, he slid a makeshift pick inside. The tumblers groaned in protest. Sweat beaded his brow. His rational voice screamed at him to stop, but his hand pressed forward, clicked out the bolt, released the door creaked open. Just an inch, and the smell that poured out was suffocating. A damp, stale odor, tinged with something metallic. Something that made his stomach twist. He raised the flashlight, but the beam caught only darkness. Heart hammering, Lo pushed the door wider and stepped inside apartment 6B. The air in apartment 6B clung to Enlo like a damp shroud. The stench tail rot mixed with coppery tench choked him, every breath heavier than the last. He hesitated just beyond the threshold, his flashlight trembling in his grip. Dust spiraled through the beam, swirling like disturbed ash. His first impression was emptiness. The room stretched before him, hollow and bare, the wooden floor warped with age. No furniture, no curtains, no signs of life. Just shadows pooling in corners where the weak light couldn't reach. And yet, the silence was alive. Hello. His voice cracked against the walls, swallowed almost instantly by the stagnant air. Is anyone here? For a moment, there was no answer. Then so faint, he nearly dismissed Ita's small sound drifted from deeper inside. A child's giggle. The hairs on his arms bristled. His throat tightened. Mrs. Aguilar's story, the girl. Lo forced his feet forward, each step groaning across the brittle floorboards. His flashlight swept over peeling wallpaper, faded water stains, and a single crack running like a jagged scar along the ceiling. Nothing out of the ordinary, nothing to justify the dread crawling under his skin. And then he saw it. On the far wall, half hidden in shadow, was a door. Not the apartment entrance, but another interior door, narrow, old-fashioned, with chipped white paint and a handle that looked more ornamental than functional. Something about it felt wrong, as though it didn't belong. The giggle came again, clearer this time, right behind that door. Lo's pulse thundered. He approached, swallowing the dryness in his throat. "Hello? Are you trapped in there?" His hand hovered over the handle. For a split second, his mind screamed, "Don't open it. Don't." But the thought of turning away, of leaving, whatever or whoever was inside, was unbearable. He gripped the handle and twisted. The door swung inward with a groan. The flashlight's beam fell onto a narrow corridor far too long to exist inside the dimensions of the apartment. Its walls were lined with faded floral wallpaper, curling at the edges, and a threadbare carpet stretched endlessly into the dark. And standing halfway down that corridor was a little girl. She couldn't have been older than 7. Her hair hung in tangled strands around her pale face, her dress smudged and torn. She stood barefoot, toes sinking into the carpet, her head tilted slightly as though studying him. Mo's breath caught. "Oh my God." You before he could finish. She smiled. Not the innocent, sweet smile of a child, but something else. Something jagged. Her lips stretched too wide, revealing teeth that seemed just a little too sharp. "You came," she whispered, her voice soft, melodic. Lo stumbled back a step. Every instinct screamed at him to run, but his feet felt anchored. What happened to you?" Her smile faltered, replaced by something darker, sadder. "He wouldn't let us leave." The hallway light flickered, and suddenly shadows writhed along the wallpaper like living things. "Who?" Lo asked, his voice thin. The girl's eyes shifted not at him, but to the space above his shoulder. "He's already here." A cold breath brushed the back of No's neck. He spun, flashlight darting wildly. For a heartbeat, he thought the hallway was empty. Then the beam caught at something tall, impossibly tall, pressed into the corner. It looked human at first. A man-shaped silhouette, long limbs folded unnaturally, head bent so low its chin nearly touched its chest. Its skin was the color of ash, stretched taut, and its fingers longer than any human hand should allow dragged across the walls, leaving black streaks like burnt tar. And then it raised its head. Its face sore, what should have been a face, smooth, featureless, no eyes, no mouth, no nose, just skin, blank and gleaming under the trembling beam of light. Low scream caught in his throat. His body reacted before his mind, shoving backward, slamming against the narrow doorframe. The girl's laughter erupted behind him, no longer sweet but shrill and layered, as if more than one voice were speaking through her. "You shouldn't have come in," she sang. The figure began to move. Its limbs unfolded with slow, deliberate grace, joints popping like cracking bones. Each step it took made the floor groan, but its faceless head remained fixed on him. NLO bolted. He didn't care where the corridor led, didn't care if it defied the very physics of the building he just ran. His flashlight beam swung wildly, catching glimpses of warped wallpaper and flickering sconces. But the hall never seemed to end. Behind him, the sound of footsteps followed, heavy, dragging, unhurried, and over it all, the child's laughter rang out, echoing endlessly. He didn't remember how he reached his own apartment. One moment he was sprinting through the impossible corridor. The next, he was collapsing inside. His living room, the door to 6B slammed shut behind him. His flashlight clattered to the floor, spinning until it died. NLO pressed his back against the door, gasping, drenched in sweat. The building was quiet again. Too quiet. For hours, he sat there in the dark, waiting for the knock, the laugh, the breath on his neck. But nothing came. When dawn broke, pale light filtering through the blinds, he dared to open his door. The hallway stretched before him, ordinary and still. Apartment 6B's door was shut tight, the lock sealed once more as though it had never been touched. Had he imagined it all? He might have believed that, if not for the carpet fibers clinging to his bare feet, and the faint giggle that lingered in his ears, promising he hadn't left 6B behind at all.